Negotiate like a pro. Body language, tonality, and handshake secrets to handle any conversation with confidence. Welcome to Personal Development Mastery, the podcast that helps intelligent, busy professionals develop self-mastery and gain clarity, so you can thrive in a fulfilling, purposeful life. Join us every Monday for an insightful conversation with a guest, and each Thursday for a shorter episode where I reflect and share with you. I am your host, Agi Keramidas, and this is episode 532. If you are looking to improve your communication skills and handle high-stakes conversations with confidence, this conversation with a former secret agent explores how body language, vocal tone, and even your handshake can transform your interactions. By listening today, you are going to learn the subtle handshake and body language adjustments that instantly create trust and credibility. You will also discover the vocal tone shifts that project confidence and reduce tension. And you will understand the patterns and red flags that can help you detect dishonesty. If you are ready to communicate more effectively, then this episode is for you. Before we dive in, if you're in a life or career transition and resonate with the topics we discuss here, I offer one-to-one coaching and mentoring to help you find clarity and move forward with purpose. Are you curious to explore what that could look like for you? Visit personaldevelopmentmasterypodcast.com/mentor or just tap the link in the show notes. Now let's get started. Today my guest is Brad Beeler. Brad, you are a recently retired special agent with the United States Secret Service, where you served for 25 years and became one of the agency's most respected polygraph examiners. You now bring your expertise to communication, negotiation, and leadership, and you are passionate about helping others master communication and navigate difficult conversations using advanced credibility and elicitation techniques. Brad, it's an honor to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
We will explore, I'm looking forward to this, how to manage difficult conversations, which is something I believe very important. Also, how to get people to open up, improving communication. So in this kind of topic, since it is your expertise, before we go there, I would like you to tell us, can you walk us through a real moment where everything hinged on your ability to communicate effectively, and what happened, how you handled it?
No, that's a really insightful question, and it definitely brings back a lot of memories. A lot of the people that I've talked to over the years with polygraph, we help out the local police department when it comes to their very significant cases, homicide, child sexual assault. So there's been hundreds of situations where I'm trying to get somebody to explain something that's maybe not in their best interest about how they committed an act of violence or of inappropriate contact with a child. But the one thing that jumps into mind when you ask that question was a situation that happened in China during a protective assignment. So the Secret Service, we do protection, but we also do investigations. But when the president and the former president were coming to during the U.S. Olympics in Beijing, basically I had set up the security perimeter and everything was dialed in. We thought we had all contingencies planned for. And then about 5 minutes before arrival, we had 40 local police officers from Beijing show up and basically try to shut down the facility. It was just mayhem. There was pushing, there was shoving between the U.S. Olympic team, between the Chinese. I thought we were going to have an international incident. And it just shows being able to speak the local language wherever you are, how important that is. And it's a superpower. If you can speak whatever language in whatever country you're in, not only do you get instant credibility, but it allows you to navigate those difficult situations. And as many Americans, I speak one language, and that's English, and I could not communicate with the locals. So luckily, I had a Secret Service agent that spoke Chinese, Mandarin, and it was one of these things where he was able to somehow communicate, and we're in this back and forth. And right before arrival, we were able to allow, allow their detail leader to say, "Hey, can you show us around?" To kind of allow him to save face. And, so just in the nick of time, we were able to keep an international incident from happening. And a lot of it was just miscommunication, not being able to speak someone's language. So a lot of what I talk about is the universal language of body language. My best friend is deaf. And for 35 years, I do know sign language. But before I learned sign language, I learned if he can see my face, if I can be present in the conversation, and if I can use my body language, it doesn't matter what culture you're in, you can communicate stress, distress, and certain things along those lines. Or in this sense, I can at least communicate that I'm not a threat to the Chinese nationals as they were coming onto our scene. So I am a true believer that we need to focus on the words we say, the lyrics, how we say them, the soundtrack, and then our body language, which is the dance. And we got to put all that together and be present in our conversations.
I like the metaphor of the dance and the singing and the lyrics. It's quite interesting. Since you mentioned body language, I was planning to ask you later on, but since you mentioned it, you mentioned the role that it plays and its importance. Can you give us right now something that comes from your experience as perhaps something that many people do wrong in their conversations with other people in their body language, something that we should be aware of perhaps?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question how you frame it, in that I think you need to start on a timeline almost of communication. So most communication starts, at least professionally, with a handshake, and it ends with a handshake. And what most people remember about a conversation is the first part of the conversation and the last part of the conversation. So we have to hack that first body language, which is as we approach the person. And we don't approach them with neutral. We don't approach them with contempt, because first impressions, or the primacy effect, is built upon our ancient ancestors looking and seeing. Those are the first two main senses, because we can do them from farther away, as to whether or not you are a threat to me. So that's it. Are you a threat to me? And even though we've evolved, over these hundreds of thousands of years, that's something that still resides into us. Am I experiencing a threat? So I want soft eyes. I maybe want even a slight eyebrow flash, okay, just to show interest. I might expose my carotid artery a little bit just by kicking my head off to the side. I'm going to have good distance between my ear and my shoulders, which is going to show that I'm not tense. I'm going to be showing my hands. All right. I don't have a weapon. I'm going to be showing my hands. And when we go into a handshake, there's the best handshake in the world is a dry handshake that's not cold. And too often, and I know you've probably had bad handshakes that are cold and clammy, it's brought on by nerves, right? So if I'm seated at a dinner party, something like that, I'm not going to be holding on to a cold water bottle, because then when I shake your hand, it's going to be cold and it's going to be wet. So instantaneously, subconsciously to them, that is a really bad sign. But if I take my coffee cup here and I'm holding on to that, and then I shake your hand, I've got the warmth down. Also, if I know I'm going to be going in for a job interview or a sensitive communication, I will put antiperspirant on my hands. That way you will never get moisture from me when I shake your hands. I'm typically going to have my hand at about a 1 o'clock, because people naturally like to pronate. And as a result, I'm exposing the lighter part of my hand, which shows, once again, I don't have a weapon. It's going to be easier for you to not misconnect when you shake my hand. And I think what a lot of people misunderstand about a handshake is it's not a shake, it's a hold. Too many times people sit there and they shake uncomfortably. Some of this is culturally. I know you're Greek. Okay. Handshake and touching is different, in that part of the world than it is in others. But in America, a nice 1 second hold while we have eye contact, while our heart is facing their heart. The worst thing we can do is face away, shake someone's hand, and not have eye contact. The politicians that do that are viewed as uncharismatic. The politicians that I've seen that do that are viewed as very charismatic, regardless of politics. People can say what they want about Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, whatever, on either side of the aisle here in America, but they will say that those people had charisma and they connected with me because they have great handshakes and they have great interpersonal skills. So I would say, I know I've kind of went on for this tangent, but I would say handshakes are something that people mess up every day in the world. And if you get that right, you're going to metaphorically put a halo on your head instead of horns. And then because of cognitive bias, what's going to happen is people are going to look for the best in you instead of assume the worst. So in business, personal life, professional life, if you get a great handshake and you keep an open posture during the interaction with maybe a nice slight flow forward lean, nice minimal encouragers as we're going on, and definitely never showing contempt. I've lost confessions when subconsciously I furrowed my brow and I showed disgust. When you show that, that is a huge stopper in interpersonal communications.
Thank you for this detailed and so expansive answer. It was so many different elements there of the body language. Appreciate it very much. I will ask you, since you started giving this, and I'm very much fond of these practical things that one can pick and implement straight away. I would like also to hear your thoughts or advice, perhaps, on the other big part of communication, which is our tonality, how we use the tone of our voice. I think you said it, how was it the singing when you used the metaphor? Mm-hmm. Again, tell us what many people do wrong and how can one start to improve things?
Absolutely. So we sometimes think about the perfect words to say while we're talking. And how this relates to me personally is I remember during my first polygraph examination where I was out of my internship, I was on my own. Somebody failed my test. It was a double homicide. And it was one of these things where I really wanted to obtain why this person did this. I wanted them to admit. But when I confronted them, it was my voice pitch was super high. You could tell I was unsure of myself. My statements sounded like questions. And that's what we got to be careful about is that upward pitch, especially when we first meet, because we are coded to hear a higher pitch voice from an evolutionary standard as threats. It's kind of like with our kids. When you can tell if your kid is hurt by how they're crying. If that is a super high pitched cry and it's instantaneous, we code that as, oh boy, what's going on? We got to go check out what happened in the other room. It's the same thing when I meet someone and if they have a very high pitched voice, even if it's at a subconscious level, I can code that as distress, unsure, that they're unsure of themselves, that they're not confident. So I don't want you to be fake about it. But if when we first meet, what I like to do is I slow down and I lower my vocal tonality just a little bit because I don't want to come off as if I'm in stress. When you listen to police radio calls, especially with a lot of rookies, what you'll hear is, they're nervous, they're amped up, and they sound like the 12-year-old version of themselves. They don't sound like somebody that's calm and composed. So if you're doing a negotiation, if you're selling a car, if you're talking to your kids, you need to think, if we wrote those words out, if the teleprompter wrote them out, would there have been a question mark after the end of it? Or would there have been an exclamation point after the end of it? The way we say it can also lead to other inquiries. So if you were talking about a negotiation and you were saying, I'm just under a lot of pressure at work right now. And I mirror back to you and I say, so you're under a lot of pressure? That's one way to say it. And that's a statement. And it's going to get a yes or no answer. If I say, so you're under a lot of pressure? You see, I kind of went up a little bit in my voice inflection. People want to answer a question. So what they may say is, man, I didn't hit my number last month and, I've got some stuff going on at home, whatever the case may be. I instantly elicited 2 or 3 different bits of information by how I ended that question. But that's usually not how I like to do it. Usually, if I'm not eliciting and I want to sound confident, it's like when I say the word no. If I'm questioning a bad guy and I say, did you do X, Y, and Z? And they said no. It's almost like they're asking the question to see if I buy their answer versus, did you do that bad thing? No. Well, that was with an exclamation point. So if you want conviction in your communications, think if somebody was just listening to this, would it sound as if I had an exclamation point behind what the word that I just spoke? The analogy I like to give is the old band Milli Vanilli. They made it in the 80s, right? I went to one of their concerts, right? I went to one of their concerts. And for your listeners that don't know Milli Vanilli, the lyrics were written by, I think Farian was his name. He was a producer, and he took a German model and a Dutch model, and basically they were great dancers. And he basically created this image where they weren't the singers. They didn't write the music. And at the Grammy Awards, the DVD kept sticking and it all came out. But they sold, 12, 15 million records, whatever the case may be, because of the complete image, the dancing. Okay. It wasn't the words. Mm-hmm. The singing was okay. It was the dancing. Once people realized that, that wasn't really them, the other band, the actual Milli Vanilli, put their music out and nobody bought it because they didn't have that last aspect of putting it all together.
I do remember them, and then the real Milli Vanilli, which
the real Milli Vanilli,
I don't remember any of the real songs, but I remember a couple of songs of the other one. Thank you. This is very useful, Brad. Let me ask. I will bring us to something, let's say, a bit more specific. Now, I read something and it intrigued me that you wrote. You said something about sales and interrogation being related. So I would like to hear more about this.
Yeah. So if you think about it, and if we go to Cialdini's principle, Arizona State PhD put out a book called Influence many, many years ago, sold millions and millions of copies, but he looked at the principles of influence, reciprocity, consistency. It goes on, 7 to 8 principles, scarcity. We do the same thing. And I don't want to use the word, sometimes the word interrogation gets a bad name. I would say investigative interviewing. I use the word interrogation, but sometimes in the public nexus, it gets a little, because people think of the dark side of interrogation, which we don't do.
Thank you for clarifying that.
We have conversations, and I never raise my voice. I'm, personable, empathetic, but a lot of people, the Hollywood version of interrogation, kicks in. So I'm selling a product. You're selling a product. People are selling something with their kids every single day. It's just, I'm selling jail. Okay. I'm selling a timeshare for 15 years, maybe in an 8x8 cell that has all-inclusive meals. We'll provide, that's a hard thing to sell. Okay. But are there certain things that I'm going to do? Yes. I'm going to prepare. I'm going to know the case facts. Do we think when you walk on a car lot that they're not preparing? I may provide them food, water, and drink. The same thing's going to happen with that car dealer that's going to say, can I get you something to drink? I'm going to give them a polygraph examination. They're going to give you a test drive. Okay. After the test drive, they're going to bring you back to the finance office. I'm going to bring you maybe back to the interview room to talk to you about how you did poorly on the polygraph. So selling is pretty universal. I think we make it too complicated. It's about connecting with people. It's about preparing with people. It's providing about what is in your best interest. For me, I focus a lot, not on the what, but the why. And if you can give the people why, they can make their own decision on how it's in their best interest. So you tell stories. We've gotten away from that. We don't improv anymore. We talk to people in delayed communications, text messages, emails. And as a result, we have the inability to do what we're doing right now, where I can gauge in how you just responded. Oh, you gave me a minimal encourager there. You shook your head yes. So we've lost that ability. And you wonder why when people get in a sales environment, this current generation, or they come in for a job interview, how there's that delay and there's that deer in the headlights look, because they're not used to engaging in those spontaneous communications.
Thank you. That is indeed, and since you brought it up, I would like to hear a bit more about this lack of the other communication elements that the emails and texts that many people rely on, especially the younger generations. if you have something, perhaps, again, I will say the word practical for someone, perhaps that they should do in a better way, in an improved way.
Yeah. So to go back first, when you talked about your voice, there are tons of applications that you can get on your iPhone or your Android that literally in 5 minutes a day can teach you to have better vocal range. So you make yourself more interesting. They actually will record how fast you're speaking, because we typically want to be about 130 words per minute so that you get cognizant of that. So I'd say as far as voice, that's something that you can definitely do. Another thing is record yourself. So what I teach a lot of my students when I was teaching at the Federal Polygraph School here in the United States is I would record them just like we're in a situation right now, but I would have them watch it without the video and just have them listen to themselves. And then what I would do is I'd turn the volume down and I'd have them watch themselves. And I say, are you congruent in your message? Because you're looking down, you're trying to sound confident. If I just listen to you, I would say that's a confident person. Or I would see, and they've got this body language, but they're talking like this, you know? And so that was very eye-opening, because a lot of people can't in real time see what they're doing wrong. And just understand, you don't have to pick the right word, because the words are not as important as how you look saying the word and how you sound saying the word. So if you can master those, you don't have to sit there and think. Most people have about 25,000 words in their brain. So think about the software. Is that too many people get in a software problem? Okay, they're thinking about the perfect word versus worrying about the hardware. Okay, I can hack the hardware a lot easier than I can fix the software. So and the hardware, in my opinion, body language and how we speak, is more important. Who remembers the voice of Darth Vader? Okay, everyone. James Earl Jones, right? You put anyone else in that part, and that's not Darth Vader. So how we sound is, I don't want to say it's a life hack, but if you're going to do something for 10 minutes a day, your voice can be improved drastically.
Excellent. Thank you. That's very useful and very practical. As a matter of fact, I was, sometimes you have some ads that come up on your Instagram feed. And this, I keep getting that. So now that you've also mentioned it, I think it's time for me to check it out. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, try it out. 7 days usually they give you for free. Try it out.
I will, most certainly. Brad, let me ask something a little bit different. When we are in, let's say, or when someone is in a high-stakes situation, let's say it is negotiating a deal, for example, or an important leadership meeting, how can we tell when someone is not being honest? And what's the best way to respond respond to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously it's dependent upon culture, circumstance, context in some respects. But let's say I'm in a business meeting and somebody is talking about quarterly earnings or a product, whatever the case may be. I would love, and it's amazing what's out there about people. So in my preparation, I'm going to see if there's any online, what's out there, because everybody doesn't put their diaries under their bed anymore. They put their diaries online, right? So I'm going to do my preparation. I'm going to find out, do I have any other instances of this person speaking in similar situations so that I can establish that baseline? And anybody that says, hey, if you touch your nose or you do this or eye contact that, there's no one characteristic that denotes if somebody's being honest. But the way I like to view it is this, is when someone is in an open, you give them an open-ended question. It's kind of like a dog off a leash, and they can take you wherever they want to take you, and they can omit whatever they don't want to say that's negative in their light. So when they're off the leash and they're giving me a statement, I'm looking for words like so, then, next, after that, transitional type words that I will then take little notes, and I'll be like, okay. And then what I'll do is I'll ask specific questions around those timeframes to try to determine, now I'm giving you a yes or no question. And the easiest way to explain this is if I ask you a yes or no question, I should get a yes or no response, and I should get it in a timely fashion. The first thing that I look for is delay, because it's the easiest to see, is that if I ask you, did you shoot that man? It's pretty easy for you to say no. If I ask you, did you shoot that man? And there's a long delay and you repeat the question, you're buying yourself time. Is it 100%? Absolutely not. But it's a huge red flag, because that was an easy question and you should have been able to give me an easy response. If I give you a yes or no answer and you say, normally, for the most part, anything with an LY, exclusive qualifiers, big red flags for me. If I ask you a yes or no question and you confront me, how dare you ask me, or you spice it up with, I'm the most religious person in the world, why would I ever do that? Yeah. It's not 100%, but I'm asking you a yes or no question. Why do you feel like you need to help yourself out and get external validity in that question? Why do you have to shroud yourself in religion with that? A lot of times people will do a truth sandwich where they'll have truthful information, because that lowers the cortisol of lying and the fear of lying. Then they throw the lie in there, and then they get another truthful statement. So that, because it's uncomfortable to lie. So that's what a lot of times people will do. You can also subtly sometimes see this, where people are shaking their head yes and they say no, or they're shaking their head no and they say yes. You very rarely see it, but when you do, the body language is what I'm going to trust, not the spoken word. Many, many times it's a disconnect. And then the shifting vocal inflection that we talked about earlier, as far as no, kind of said as a question. So I see that a lot with my kids. Did you clean your room? Yeah. Yes. Or did you get all your homework done? I got all my math homework done. Well, that was very specific, right? Did you get all your homework done? Oh no, I still got some English, right? So those are little, I hope there's something there that somebody can unpack, is that you look for clusters, you look for multiple things, you look for things you can hone in on and ask additional questions. But if you look at what's out there on TikTok and Instagram I touched my nose, I did this, I crossed my arms. Those are situational factors that in the time could happen for a lot of different reasons.
This is great. I got from that, because it wasn't I think many things someone can pick. For me, it was the hesitation before answering what should be a simple yes or no answer. And that's something that, of course, if someone hesitates answering every question, I suppose it depends on the person also.
Yes, baseline,
baseline, exactly. Brad, I want to, it's been a truly fascinating conversation, the topic of communication and connection, because in the end it has to do with connection. You mentioned influence, all these things. You mentioned examples with our children. All these things are, I believe, foundational in our our experience of life. Also, the better we are at communicating, the more we can also do. As I will start wrapping things up, the first thing I want to ask you is, where would you like to direct the listener who has enjoyed this conversation and wants to find out more about you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, Brad Beeler 1865 on both. And because I'm writing a new book, I had to come up with a website that should be out here next week, or at least by the time the episode drops. It's bradleybeeler.com. That'd probably be the best way to get a hold of me.
Thank you. And I have two quick questions which I always ask my guests. What does personal development mean to you?
Interesting. For me, personal development is, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I want to view life as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what I mean by that is there's a belt structure. You start out as a white belt and you learn a lot really, really quick. And then you start learning less things as you go on. You become a blue belt, a purple belt. And now instead of learning 10 things to practice, I learn one thing a week. And that's a lot about life, right? We learn a lot in our adolescent years, or a lot in our college years. And then we're like, we got it all figured out. And that's a lot of times when people quit jiu-jitsu, because they quit learning things. So what I say to a lot of people in my generation that think they know it all is you don't. And personal development for me is being 1% better every day, learning one thing every day that I can make actionable. But most importantly, I've realized you can only control what you do. In personal development for me is providing my skill set and the mistakes that I've made to the people that I'm teaching, those metaphorical white belts, so they can maybe change their trajectory and level up quicker than I did. So I can hopefully mentor them so they don't have to go through some of the challenges and lessons learned that I did, and maybe lose out on a case like I did. So personal development for me is helping the next generation.
And a hypothetical question. If you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
Man, you're throwing some heavy hitters at us. I don't think I would give myself much because I've learned more from my mistakes. And I don't know if that's a cop-out answer, but I truly believe in the butterfly effect, that one thing can affect something else. Is that mistakes I made or places I didn't go to school, or I played soccer in college here versus not, is the only reason that I was in this situation and threw a snowball at my buddy, and the snowball missed him and hit my wife, my future wife, that I've been married to for 27 years. So if I gave myself advice, it would completely change that trajectory. I would just say your last name is everything. And don't go for the quick success, right? I mean, you like running. Life is a marathon, right? It's not a 5K. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And that I would tell my 18-year-old self, pace yourself, right? You don't run that first mile of the marathon at a 5K pace, right? So pace yourself. Get 1% better every day. And it's kind of like the stock market. If you invest in an index fund at the age of 18, you're going to be a multimillionaire by the time you're 50. So invest in yourself, get 1% better. Your last name is everything. Don't ever do anything that would sacrifice that. But, so I hope I gave you a little bit of both there, but I'd be very careful about the advice that I gave my 18-year-old self.
Of course. And actually now you gave me a handle here, which I'm going to pick. I don't know if you probably did it inadvertently. You said something about the heavy hitters. Or I do have one more question I would like to ask to end up. You have spent decades reading people under pressure. Mm-hmm. What have these experiences taught you about mastering your own inner state in these high stress environments or in a high stress situation?
Yeah, don't react. And what I mean by that is, if you think from a protective standpoint, so the Secret Service, we do protection. Mm-hmm. And what we're taught is never let people see you sweat outwardly, because then it's going to cause fear among everybody because they're looking at you, right? It's kind of like a flight attendant. If a flight attendant is on a bumpy flight, what are they taught to do? Right? This is normal. What are they maybe thinking internally? Oh, dang, right? But if they show that, every 300 people on that plane is going to, oh my God, we're going down, right? So I would say don't expose that negative emotion or that contempt. But sometimes it's hard, because I've talked to hundreds of pedophiles, and obviously the behavior is disgusting. But if I show that and I'm not curious and I'm judgmental, they're going to shut down on me. Mm-hmm. So I always am extremely curious about leisure activities. So if I was talking to you, I would focus on your marathons and how that journey came about and what you get out of it. And, I would let you bathe in that, and I wouldn't try to one up you. You wouldn't say 5K and say, oh, I did a half marathon. And you'd say, I did a half marathon. And I'd say, oh yeah, I did a full marathon. And you said, oh, I did London. Yeah, I did Chicago. And then you'd say, I did a half Ironman. Well, I did a full Ironman. Yeah, we get into this tit for tat in modern communication where I bring it up. I let you talk about it. I may ask about your shoes, what kind of nutrition you use on the course. And as a course of that, you're going to start, man, Brad kind of knows a little bit about this. And you ask me the question then about, so do you run? Mm-hmm. So too many times in conversation, and I'm sure you get this, is you bring it up and somebody instantly thinks that they're building rapport with you by saying they did the same thing. Nope, you're just being a jerk. Right? So sorry, I took that question and kind of turned it a little bit. But I think that that's such an important lesson. And, I think we use metaphors a lot when we're talking to people. Yeah. And I always need to do the preparation. So for you, I would use metaphors about dentistry. I would use metaphors about, running and taking care of yourself and personal development. And, that life is a journey, that life is a marathon, that we have this many books of life. I would talk about, maybe if you were a bad guy, I'd say, look, we've identified the problem here. Similar to dentistry, we take a bite ring x-ray, we see where there's a problem. And what do we need to do? We need to go fix that problem, because if we don't fix the problem, John, next thing you know, we're doing a root canal. I mean, it sounds like a goofy metaphor, but for you, I could not be talking about the crime, but I could use dentistry as the metaphor to connect with you.
Brad, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. It was fascinating. I appreciate you. I want to wish you the very best in spreading this empowering message of, how to improve our communication. I will leave it to you for your parting words.
My parting words are a great interview, and you threw me 3 or 4 questions that I've never been asked before. So it's like anything else, right? Is it to be better at podcasting or communication, you can't do the same thing every day. When I do jujitsu, I like to go to different schools because you're not in this echo chamber. You get somewhere else and you try something else. So you threw me in a different echo chamber here today, which is always good. You showed me some different things. I have to respond to them. It's going to make me 1% better today. So mission accomplished.
Thank you for listening to this conversation with Brad Beeler. I hope it has given you a fresh perspective on how to navigate difficult conversations and create meaningful connections. If this conversation inspired or helped you, if it gave you something meaningful, consider supporting the show. Just visit personaldevelopmentmasterypodcast.com/support or tap the link in the episode description. As a thank you, I will send you a personal small gift and mention you in a future episode. Thank you for being part of the journey. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,